Hello, fellow light-being humans. This is Mahadeva, the Thunder Wizard. Welcome back to the channel. I hope you're all doing well. So today I thought I would go into depth explaining what I call the ladder of consciousness. What I found out after having my experience, which is still ongoing, of having made contact with higher dimensional extraterrestrial beings and the journey that has taken me on, I've come to find out that there is what I call a ladder of consciousness. I wouldn't call it a hierarchy of consciousness because it's not fixed in the sense that beings are not fixed into one category, but there are different expressions of consciousness depending on what dimension you happen to be interacting with. And that's the best way to look at it. Right now, if you're watching this, you're a human. All humans are having a specific experience of manifested consciousness, which we experience as third dimensional earth reality. But that is only a focus. You are actually experiencing consciousness simultaneously on multiple levels. So what I call a ladder of consciousness isn't so much that there's like a hierarchy of these beings are here like this. It's more like you choose which rung of the ladder that you want to be at. And this is really important. My experience is that there's differing levels of power depending upon which dimension you are experiencing. So power and consciousness and awareness becomes very empowered and expanded the higher you go. And if you're at a lower level of dimensionality, then what ends up happening is that it feels to you like higher dimensional beings are more powerful, more knowledgeable. You feel like they are superior to you. This is why we worship deities as opposed to other humans. But once you get beyond the third dimensional confines, my experience is that all consciousness treats each other equally. Even if you're communicating with a 9th or a 10th dimensional being, that being treats you in your third dimensional awareness as equal to them, even though the energetic comparative reality is they might be gods compared to you. So if anybody's looking to become a god because they want to rule over others or get power over others, that's not how it works. As I'm on that subject, just to think about it, I mean, if that were the case, then no human would ever, create any negative karma. No human would ever do anything negative because the beings that rule over us would prevent that from happening. And it's clear that we have the ability to do whatever we want. It looks as though Mother Earth and consciousness is going to put an end to the negative things that are going on here on Earth. But generally speaking, we can't control anybody else. Even if you're a 12th dimensional God, you still don't have the right to control anybody else's free will. So, if you're new to the channel, this channel is about giving you practical tools to achieve your enlightenment, your empowerment. My understanding based on my interactions with higher dimensional beings is that this three-dimensional Earth that we're on is coming to an end, and we will be given a choice to shift to a higher dimension, which people call 5D, or to shift down to a lower dimension of the third our third dimensional reality. So I'm here to give you the tools so that you can shift up. And all of the links are here to accomplish that. First thing, if you're new to the channel, what I want you to do is go onto the playlists of the YouTube channel. These are free. Go to the playlists and do the Awakening the Immortals Qigong so you can feel higher dimensional energy and open up your three energies, Kundalini and Qi and the electromagnetic energy of the heart. Then I want you to go and do the guided interdimensional meditations, which are also free on the channel. And then I want you to go and do the 12 steps to 5D. For everybody who is serious about moving beyond their limitations, then I recommend you go here to thunderwizard.com, the website, and subscribe to the Warrior 90-Day Lightning Qigong. For those who want the real high-level energy practices as well as every other thing that I teach, go here to 923.thunderwizard.com. I'm giving thousands of dollars worth of teachings away for almost nothing. And of course my books can be found at michaelwilliamdenny.com, or just go on to Amazon, Kindle, and Audible and look for them. So, the truth about aliens and ETs, we're going to talk about interdimensionals, deities, spirits, demons. We'll try and get to all of them. And I've got here this very rudimentary ladder of consciousness. So before we get into that, I want to talk about the difference between aliens and ETs. So before I had my experience with extraterrestrials, as I've told you guys, I did not believe in aliens. And I didn't believe in them not because there wasn't evidence for it. I didn't believe in it for a couple of reasons. The first one is, of course, based on Newtonian science, nothing can go faster than the speed of light, so therefore it would have been impossible for an extraterrestrial society to visit Earth because they would die in the process, because there's hundreds or thousands of light years away, millions of light years away. There's no way they could make the journey. But there was another reason I didn't believe in it. And that is because I hold on to an assumption which has proven to be true. And I held on to an assumption that the universe must make sense. Otherwise it wouldn't exist. And the universe must be a just and fair place. Now I know that we experience a lot of unfair, challenging things on Earth. And so this is where the whole idea of reincarnation and karma, burning off karma so that you can reach a higher level of existence. But even beyond that, choosing to reincarnate so you can learn and grow in your power. That isn't something that we can see by looking at the world. There's no real evidence for that just by looking at the physical world. But it makes sense. It's the only model of conscious existence that makes any sense. And so I came to the conclusion that this must be a just universe. And so I've held on to that, which means that if you follow your true essence, your happiness, the universe must reward you with that, with all of the resources that you need. Because when you follow your soul, you are in essence your God. And the universe must obey God. So any conscious being following their soul is in fact God. Everything must surround, protect, and provide for that. So that's an assumption I made. It turned out to be true. I've lived that reality and it is proven true. It has also been proven true that people who live opposite of that create misery for themselves. People who seek to be accepted by anything outside of themselves, people who seek fame, glory, money, power, Anybody who seeks these things is seeking to get approval from something outside of themselves, which goes against the idea that the kingdom of God is within you. So that means what you must find is within you. You must find your happiness, your joy, your peace, your validity, your verification, your value must come from within you, right? These are all assumptions that can't be proven, but the way you prove them is you choose to live by those assumptions. And by the way, again, this is the cause of all pain, all illness, all misery, all poverty, all sadness, all loneliness, all destruction comes from people who are unwilling to trust that their soul is in fact God and that the universe must worship God, meaning when you follow your soul, the universe must worship you. The decision not to believe that will then take you down a path of action, which will cause misery. So every single negative experience that people have is a result of them not trusting that their soul is what gives them their value and acting on their soul's desire. It's the only thing that matters in this world. As I say in the book, The Shamanic Secret Commandment to a Perfect Life, which you can get at my books, I recommend everybody read that. Again, it blows my mind how many people are on my channel and haven't read my books. It blows my mind how many people are they're subscribed, they come on here regularly, but they haven't bothered to read my books. All the stuff I talk about comes from that, and it blows my mind. That kind of behavior is, I don't understand it, but such is the nature of human nature. All right, I got off subject as I often do. So I wanted to talk about aliens versus extraterrestrials. So I'm going to give you an assumption that you can choose to accept or reject, but my experience proves this out. The assumption is that any being that does abductions, abducts humans, any being that where humans experience missing time, where humans experience false screen memories of events. Any being that does that, I am going to call an alien. So, do I believe in aliens? I do believe in aliens. The question is, what are aliens? I do believe in alien abductions. This is a real thing. It does happen. There's many, many thousands of people in the world who have been abducted and been experimented on, and had, undergone missing time and been gone through breeding programs and all these kinds of things. This is a very real thing, and these are all done by what I call aliens. These are not extraterrestrials. So there's a belief out there, this is again one of the frustrating parts for me being a contactee of extraterrestrials, is that it's very frustrating to try and interact with the community of people out there who either are interested in this or have experienced something along the lines of either aliens, UFOs, or extraterrestrials. Because there's this hodgepodge of conflated experience and knowledge and beliefs and opinions and a lot of false things that are being taught. And so what ends up happening is people don't know what to believe, and people don't know how to understand their experiences. So I'm talking around the idea of alien abductions being real, and also being done by third dimensional beings. So what I'm going to get into today is, hopefully I'm going to start talking about the separation of different dimensions and the different kinds of beings that live in different dimensions. But on the 29th of October, I was invited to speak in front of a small group of UFO alien enthusiasts. And the person that spoke before me was an alien abductee. Now, I didn't know how I was going to handle this, because you know how strong my feelings are. I have very, very strong feelings about alien abductions. They're real, but they're not being done by extraterrestrials. During the questions and answers that people were having, both me and the alien abductee, who I also believe has experience with actual extraterrestrials, and she didn't ask. Had she asked, I would have delineated which ones were actual ETs and which ones were aliens. But in the questions and answers, people were wanting to know things like, the good aliens versus bad aliens. And the assumption behind that belief, it's coming from actual experiences, and people are gathering different experiences and different beliefs, and it ends up turning into this conflation where there's aliens. All aliens are extraterrestrials, and so there are good ones and bad ones, and it creates a confusion that actually works for the alien agenda. These aliens have an agenda. So I got to meet this person, because unfortunately there are a lot of people out there who claim to have been abducted who are lying, outright lying. I forget the guy's name, but there's a guy very famous because there are videos of him at a deposition in court where he admits that he invented everything and he's doing it for money. Other people who won't, he won't let people use, words that he's used about supposed ETs and names that he's used for supposed ETs. He doesn't allow anybody else to use those because he has a copyright on them. That would be like me saying, I made up the word kangaroo, so that if anybody uses the word kangaroo, you have to pay me money because I have copyright on it. I made up, and then, I made up kangaroos. They're my own creation. That's what this guy was saying. So he's obviously making things up. He's obviously a scam artist, and he's doing it for money, and he's lying to people. There's no shortage of people out there. I've run into people who talk about experiences who are lying, and I've run into people who are crazy. They're deluded. They have a mental illness. They make up these crazy, or they imagine these crazy things, and then nobody. I sound crazy. So anybody else saying something completely, totally nuts, how are you going to say I'm right and they're wrong? Until human beings actually all start experiencing extraterrestrials, there's no way to tell the truth. But there's a bunch of crazy people out there talking about ETs and aliens and all that stuff, and they're just bonkers. But when people talk about good aliens versus bad aliens, I want to help them with that. So these questions came up about good aliens versus bad aliens, and I made it clear that based on my experience, the beings that I interact with would never, ever abduct a human being, ever. Not only would they never do it, but it is morally reprehensible to them. The idea of violating your personal boundaries, your emotional boundaries, your psychological boundaries, your spiritual boundaries, the idea of them doing that is absolutely abhorrent to them. They will never, ever violate your boundaries. That, of course, is not what happens when people are abducted. And so I have very strong opinions, because a lot of people want to spiritualize abductions as being some kind of spiritual experience. And they're not. They're abuse. Period. End of story. Because no conscious being has permission to violate the boundaries of any other conscious being. That is a spiritual rule throughout the entire universe. Humans do it, but they pay a price for it. They pay a karmic price. It is also my absolute experience that beings who are able to go into dimensions higher than the third dimension, they are actually incapable of consciously violating your boundaries. They are incapable of doing it. So then the question is, who's doing the abducting? So people were asking questions about the good aliens versus the bad aliens, and they were saying, are there bad aliens who have an agreement and are working with governments? So the way that I responded to that, because I was sensitive to the abductee's experience, and she hadn't asked, she didn't say, what's your opinion on this? So I didn't give it to her. But the way that I dealt with that was I said there are definitely bad aliens working with governments, but the governments aren't working with the bad aliens. The bad aliens are working for the governments, for the deep state, for the unacknowledged, for the Illuminati, for the elite, for the dark forces, whatever words you want to use. So if you're new to all of this and you're wondering that aliens do exist, but they're not working with the Illuminati, they are working for them. They are the servants. They only do what their human masters tell them to do. So aliens are mastered and ruled by other humans. And then the question becomes, what are aliens? And I like the word alien. I'm repeating it for a reason, because the word alien means different. The first word for psychologists who dealt with people who had serious mental illnesses were called alienists, because they worked with people who were completely alien to human nature. They didn't have compassion. They didn't have empathy. They were sociopathic, psychopathic. And aliens are sociopathic and psychopathic in nature. How do I know that? Because they take people hostage without their permission. They do experiments on them without their permission. They do medical experiments without their permission. They take their sexual fluids without permission, which is called rape. And then they create alien human hybrids without people's permission. That is abuse. They do other abusive things, like later, after they've taken your sexual fluids and created whatever being they've created, or created another human, they then do this really destructive thing, and they show you your offspring. That is a very destructive, emotionally destructive thing to do, and it's a way that narcissists like to show power. Here's your kid, but you can't have anything to do with him. I own him. And it creates what is that? It creates a Stockholm syndrome. So what ends up happening with alien abductees is that in order to have it all make sense, and in order to feel like they're not being, what's happening, being abused, they end up spiritualizing it. Just like, I grew up in an abusive home, and when you're a little kid and you've got abusive parents and family members, you tell yourself that they love you. They only do it because they love you. Well, I must have a reason. And alien abductees very often will have this feeling of, I'm special, I'm different, and I have a special purpose. In fact, if you read Whitley Strieber's accounts, and I believe he was an abductee as well, he talks about how he mentions it through his wife. His wife is talking to somebody or something, or actually she's regressed and aliens are speaking through her supposedly. And she says, oh, he's different. He's special. They chose him. And if you look on YouTube, it's a very big thing. The latest thing now is not being a super empath. The latest thing is being a chosen one, which means God has chosen you. And you can go look for all of the videos. Why does God allow the chosen people to be so, have so many problems, and why are they singled out, and why are they different? And this is, what happens with people who have serious unresolved codependent trauma. They have to see themselves as superior and different and special in order to, go through the survival mechanism of not acknowledging that the people they cared about have abused them. So when aliens tell the abductees, you're special, you don't realize that what's being said is they're saying that you're superior to the rest of the human race. And one thing you find out when you interact with actual extraterrestrials is that all consciousness is equal. Everybody is special. This is the strange thing about it. They will communicate to you as though you are the most special being that ever existed. And simultaneously, so is the person next to you. Being unique and special doesn't mean superior. So this is all part of the abusive, psychopathic, sociopathic nature of abusers. So you get my point. Aliens do exist. They are not extraterrestrials. They are third-dimensional beings that work for psychopathic humans. There's no shortage of evidence out there, proof out there, that aliens are all different kinds of things. They are humans in suits. They are mental impressions that are beamed into your head with electromagnetic weapons, psychological, weapons to manipulate, to seduce, to hypnotize. That is part of it. And there's also androids, robots that have AI in them that can function and be independent. And there's also androids and robots that look like aliens that are controlled remotely by humans. And, in almost all of the cases where you have people being abducted by force and brought against their will into a spaceship, there's numerous ones where when they touch the actual aliens, they say, and it didn't feel real. It felt like a mannequin. So we're talking about robots either being manipulated remotely or that have some kind of AI. Because you can tell by touching them. The abductee, again, it was a great experience for me to meet her because she was very intelligent and she didn't seem crazy. She seemed very honest and sincere and intelligent and sane. And I appreciated that because then as I listened to her experience, I knew that what she was saying was the truth. And talking about being in her conscious mind and being in her conscious awareness, being, floating up, into a spaceship and being in a spaceship and then being surrounded by other beings, including humans. And one of the interesting things about abductions is there's almost always humans on board. This is a very common thing about abductees. In fact, in many of them, people will freak out at the alien robots who are doing they might even be doing some medical experiments or something like that. And understandably, the humans will be completely flipping out. And what will happen is the aliens will leave the room and humans will come in. And they do really stupid, childish things like put humans in space helmets, things like that. But it's obvious. And there's humans there to make sure that everything is okay. To make sure that people don't completely lose it or hurt themselves or destroy, or damage the aliens or what have you. So that's almost something that happens almost regularly. There's humans in there, and the humans will act as in-between, go-betweens. They might even present themselves as aliens that happen to look like humans. Now, there are ETs that look very human. So, that, again, there's a conflation that's sort of in and out kind of thing that goes on. But I want to make it clear, the difference between ETs and aliens is that aliens are three-dimensional beings. They are completely in the control and in the service of dark force Illuminati humans. They are not from any other planet outside of Earth, and they are not outside of our third dimension. And again, when it comes to abductions, all of the abduction scenarios and testimonies that I've heard, people are in their actual three-dimensional mind. Now, weird stuff happens. So there are very strange paranormal things that happen that I can't explain. I can only assume that, again, humans have far greater technology than we've been led to believe. So humans have the ability to alter space-time. They can bend or break the rules of space-time, but they're still in the third dimension. And so it's very easy if a human who has the ability to either mess with your perception or actually change and alter three-dimensional reality, bend the laws of reality, it's very easy for you to believe, well, it must be from another solar system. But it's not. It's coming from us. So anything that happens purely in the third dimension is almost guaranteed that they are humans, posing as aliens or using their technology, to create aliens. Another one that's very important when it comes to UFOs. This is why I'm not obsessed with UFOs, because that's a real slippery slope. The vast majority of the UFOs, the UAPs that people see, are made by humans. And one of the ways you can tell is when you look at them, if they have anything where you can tell it's been constructed, if there are any seams in it, any solder joints, any screws, nuts, bolts, anything where you can see, like if it's a flying saucer and you can see there are sections that have been fit together like a pie, this is made by humans. If you can see anything underneath, if you can see any pipes or anything moving around or any kind of propulsion system, or if it makes a noise, it's human made by humans. And the vast majority of UFOs that people see fall under those categories. They're made by humans. So my experience with extraterrestrials is that they do not transport you onto their ship, not physically anyway. Astrally, that's a whole other thing. But physically, these beings will not physically pull you onto their ship, at least not yet. That may change very soon, but that's not something that they do. So let's move past aliens and ETs. I just want to give you that. And so whenever you hear anything, anybody talking about aliens, any experience with aliens, if there's a hint of any kind of sociopathy, which means not having any empathy for others. One of the other things, I don't know if I mentioned it, but as I was listening to this abductee, who I have a great deal of respect for, who I found to be very intelligent and very brave, by the way, who's gone through all kinds of crazy things and she's managed to keep her sanity. I have nothing but respect and empathy for her. She was talking about, and again, she didn't ask my opinion, so I didn't give it. But she was talking about being on board an alien ship. There were humans in there, or human-looking aliens in there, as well as weird-looking aliens. Like the Strieber kind, the short blue guys that Strieber has in his books and his movies, and then the grays. Those two. She basically saw, that's what I saw, exactly what Whitley Strieber talked about. Now, it is my opinion Whitley Strieber has been abducted by humans, posing as aliens. So that fits. And if this is a typical human construction, the short blue guys and the grays, and then humans, almost guaranteed humans are doing this. If anything comes across sociopathic. Now, she said that she couldn't tell. The beings that she was talking to in her third dimensional mind, physical body, she couldn't tell if they were happy or good or not. And that is a clear sign you're dealing with humans. Because higher dimensional beings make it very clear that they, not only that they are filled with love for you, but you feel the love. It's very intense, and love can be very frightening. But it's an energy that you feel from them, and that is unmistakable. And humans are able to replicate this, by the way. I believe that what humans are doing in these abductions is they're trying to replicate what actual ETs do. And so again, one of the things that'll happen with extraterrestrials is they will definitely teach you things and awaken powers within you, but they won't experiment. And what I think is happening with a lot of abductions is people will be abducted, taken on board a ship, and then they'll be tested. They'll be given a test, and they'll be taught things like how to fly, or how to do, how to levitate things, or how to, do psychic things. But these are more experiments. When I listen to that, what I'm hearing is that humans are experimenting on other humans. And the great way to experiment is if you think that this is, ETs are doing this, you're going to be a lot more open to that. But ETs don't experiment on you. They don't give you things and then try and teach you in an experimental way. They don't do that. The other thing I think can happen with actual abductions is there's a bunch of things. I mean, I could go into a bunch of examples. I'll give you one example. I've shared this before. I forget her name. She's been reporting on aliens and UFOs since the 60s. I forget her name. Very famous investigative reporter. Linda Moulton Howe. Now I remember. Now, I believe that Linda Moulton Howe is very sincere, but I believe she's a unwitting agent of misinformation. She seemingly gets all of her informations about UFOs and ETs from retired military personnel. It's a bad sign. Bad sign. And whenever you hear, these whistleblowers that are able to go all over, like David Grush, I have doubts about him. He's able to go all over mainstream media and somehow doesn't end up dead in a ditch somewhere. That's the sign of a plant. That's the sign of a spy. He's they may have thrown him under the bus, but they told him to go do it. He's given a pass. And that's because he's not giving the complete truth. But Linda Moulton Howe talked about in specific one, and again, she's here to prove there's this secret underground military UFO retrieval program, blah, 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 which sounds really good, except when you hear the garbage that they give you. And according to her, her informant was ex-military, and he was ordered by, now I believe this actually happened, so don't get me wrong, I believe this actually happened. He was given orders to meet with an alien ambassador. And so he was told by his commanding officer that an alien from a completely different planet and solar system was going to come and was going to telepathically communicate with him. And he was ordered to literally stand there and let this supposed alien come up and do this telepathic communication with him. Now, he was told, according to Linda Moulton Howe, he was told by the commanding officer that the alien, listen to this nonsense, that the alien is used to, he's used to levitating, so he doesn't know how to walk very well. He happens to have 2 legs, but for some reason he can't walk. He can levitate, he can go through, wormholes and travel light years in an advanced spaceship, and he has telepathic powers, but he can't walk. So he says he's going to look like a duck, sort of walking very, awkwardly. He's going to walk awkwardly, but that's because he's not used to walking. But he's going to walk for your benefit. I mean, at that point, you would have just said, let him just. I would have said, just let him levitate toward me. I get it. I'm going to talk to an alien. How much weirder can it get? But to me, this is obviously they've got a robot that they haven't perfected yet, and it doesn't know how they don't know how to make it walk very well. So just like the guy said, this alien comes out of a ship and he's waddling around over to the guy, and he waddles up in front of him, and then he was told by his commanding officer that he was going to get this telepathic download that was going to be so intense that it was going to knock him out. Knock him flat on his ass. And then they would debrief him and find out what information. And so this sounds, what makes more sense? That an alien civilization is going to give this information and say, hey, human military guys, why don't you get one of your lackeys out here, and we're going to do our best to walk, and then we're going to do our best to telepathically send you messages, and it's going to be hard on you. It might even kill you, but we're going to go ahead and do it. Does that sound real, or does it sound as though human beings are experimenting and trying to create alien robots that have this AI ability, or who knows, remote ability to telepathically download images into your brain? Which makes more sense? It sounds a lot more like people who are trying to figure it out rather than aliens who are trying to, bring themselves down to a human level. And so it's exactly what he was told. The alien waddles up to him, stands in front of him, and then he gets downloaded with all of these images and thoughts and things, and it knocks him flat on his ass. It knocks him out. He's out cold, and he's, it takes him, I don't know how hours or days for him to come out of it. And, that sounds like an experiment to me. It doesn't sound like an alien encounter. It sounds like an experiment. But Linda Moulton Howe, because she doesn't know that human beings are doing this, she's like the rest of us. She believes anything that's beyond what we can comprehend must be coming from outer space. Then therefore, these are aliens doing this. And, she gets to report on this, and she's been reporting on this for decades, and she's not, in a ditch somewhere. These are clear signs that this is misinformation. Now, what I just described to you was an extremely sociopathic event. These were beings, the aliens were sociopathic, the military that were conducting this so-called, whatever it was, interrogation or download were being sociopathic. They had no empathy for the other person. There was a lot of, going against people's boundaries and going against their own personal boundaries. So anything like that, where you're being physically, mentally, psychologically, spiritually, having an experience where things are happening against your comfort, against your own values, against your boundaries, is sociopathic and abusive. Period. End of story. So any story about aliens that has that in it, it's humans. Even if it's something beyond your comprehension. The other thing is if it's happening in the third dimension. If it's happening in the third dimension, now I'm going to give a little bit of possibility that higher dimensional beings can shift down if they want to communicate with us in the third dimension, but my experience is they don't. They don't do that. And I'm sure they could if they wanted to. Maybe they have in the past, but they normally don't. So, all right. Any ship that you can tell, any kind of construction, you can see anything on it that looks constructed, has seams, rivets, pipes, that's human made. Anything that happens where you have sociopathic interaction with human beings, where people are being abducted, experimented on, telepathically abused, physically taken anything where they aren't choosing and consciously willing to have this experience, and they talk themselves into it later, like most abuse victims do, that's human being. Those are human beings. Anything outside of that could be extraterrestrial. Extraterrestrials never, ever do anything against your will. They never do anything harmful to you. Experiencing them can be challenging, but that's only because our third dimensional mind has a hard time dealing with it. That is why the CE5 protocols exist. Dr. Greer and whatever ET he worked with to come up with the protocols is for your safety, so that the CE5 protocols are all about you opening up portals and inviting higher dimensional beings to you. You have complete control the whole way, and it is your choice. Then, when something happens that is beyond your third dimensional understanding and it's challenging, you will know that it was your choice to experience it rather than some being doing something to you. So that's very important to understand. Extraterrestrials never, ever do anything. And the other thing is, you never have any doubts about how they feel about you. They make it very clear to you. If you're even the slightest bit. Some people are blocked emotionally and they can't feel it as easily. But if you have any openness to them and to their energy, you will know without a doubt that they love you completely, totally, unconditionally, and they don't want to harm you in the slightest. And if you show the slightest bit of fear, or the slightest bit of you don't want anything to do with them, they disappear immediately. It's not the case with abductions. There's no shortage of abductions of people screaming at the top of their lungs and wanting to leave and not being able to. Reading Whitley Strieber's accounts of his son, of his little son, his little 4-year-old, 5-year-old son being abducted. And this son saying, I prayed to God to have them stop, and God wouldn't stop them. They still kept doing it. That's abuse. That's psychopathic abuse. End of story. And this line needs to be drawn in this discussion about extraterrestrials and ETs. I feel very strongly about this. Having said that, I believe that people are abducted, and I also believe that people who are abducted have sometimes interacted with ETs. And this abductee talked about she needed some healing. And she did something that I've done before. She was in meditation, and she said, if you guys are really out there, meaning ETs, because she didn't know the difference between aliens and ETs from my perspective. But she was in pain and she needed healing. And she said, if you guys are real, you've got to come and heal me. You've got to come and heal me. And then she described an exact experience that I've had, which is higher dimensional beings energetically interacting with you. And so I believe she's had both. I find it confusing, and I imagine it's confusing to her trying to figure out which is which. She probably doesn't even know, she hasn't asked me. I don't think she knows the difference between human alien abductions versus actual ET encounters. She's had both, so she doesn't know how to figure out the two. All right, so I'm done with that. Aliens versus ETs. So now let's get to the ladder of consciousness here. So we'll go down to 2 dimensions because, one of the other conflations is people are conflating extraterrestrials with demons. This is understandable because people in the 3rd dimension, including myself up until recently, didn't know how to understand anything beyond their 3-dimensional experience. So from our experience, if a being from another dimension, whether it's a lower dimension or a higher dimension, comes into our experience, we have an energetic interaction. It feels paranormal, and so we can conflate the two. An angel comes in or a demon rises from the depths from our third dimensional perspective, yes, one is pleasant, the other is unpleasant, but we have this experience that something paranormal is happening, and so we conflate it all together. That somehow people believe this, like there's this veil between, this world and the next, and so the next world is just one giant world filled with a bunch of, spiritual entities, and that's not how it works. I've come to find out that the universe is like, I don't have it here, what I'm looking for. I'm looking for my onion. The universe is like an onion. If you slice an onion in half and you look at it, you'll see all these, these things coming together, and they meet at the top and they meet at the bottom. So all of the dimensions come together. They're separated from each other, but at some point they all come together. All of the dimensions are connected, but they're different dimensions. And these dimensions are differentiated by frequency. So you can't have something of a lower frequency existing in a higher dimension. It doesn't work. But you can have things influence, and you can have things brought into, like demons, lower dimensional beings want to come into the third dimension. And so this is why black magicians, they do things and open portals and bring demons in and all of that. And there's a bunch of ways to bring demons in. One of them is trauma. When there's a huge amount of trauma, that opens up portals and those brings demons in. But demons are two-dimensional beings. Same thing with ghosts. Ghosts are not the souls of the departed. Souls are higher dimensional beings. They are beings of light. The only way that human beings can incarnate, at least this is my take on it, the only way that human beings can incarnate into the third dimension is the soul must be encased into an energetic canister, if you will. And this is called the heart mind. This is what the Maoshan, this is what I teach here at thunderwizard.com and at 923.thunderwizard.com. When I teach you the Maoshan practices of the electromagnetic energy of the heart, that is actually the enclosure that surrounds your soul. This is why the Maoshan were both, somebody asked this, couldn't figure out why people were so afraid of it. The Maoshan energy is feared by other Taoists because they don't interact with that energy. And when you interact with it is interdimensional, but the electromagnetic energy of the heart that surrounds the soul, what ends up happening is you start to find out and feel the intensity of higher dimensional awareness. Now, this feels hostile to the third dimensional mind, so people are afraid of it. But it also gives people incredible powers, and one of the powers that you get from opening up the electromagnetic energy of the heart center and letting that energy flow through the body is that you have an ability to drive away evil spirits. And the reason why you're able to drive away evil spirits if you're doing this Maoshan energy is because of frequency. Because lower dimensional beings have a specific frequency. And higher dimensional frequency, the electromagnetic energy frequency of the soul, is at a higher frequency, which is damaging. So they literally can't be in that frequency. It breaks them apart. Because as I've shared in previous videos, demons are not conscious in the way you and I are conscious. They are conscious, but they're not souls. They are the leftover emotional thought forms of human beings. So this is why demons exist where there's been murders and places like that. There will be demons around because the people doing the harmful violent things are filled with incredibly powerfully destructive emotions, and those emotions can actually leave the body and roam on their own, and they seek out human beings. They can feed off of them, and they feed off of fear. So this is why demons frighten you. They don't come to you and, people think that demons come to you pretending to be beings of light, but they don't. If they come to you, they will try to seduce you. They could, quote, pretend to be beings of light, but they'll try and seduce you in your dysfunction. So they will appeal to your greed, but they'll spiritualize it. They'll appeal to your fear, but they'll spiritualize it. In other words, they'll offer you power. We'll give you power over others. We'll give you power over women. That isn't a being of light, because a being of light would never talk like that. So there, people want to say false beings of light. Well, if you know anything about beings of light aren't sociopathic. They know that you are them, and they don't want to do anything that's harmful to you, and they're not going to encourage you to do anything that's harmful to anybody else, because that's harmful that brings their vibration down, and they don't want to leave from their higher dimensional place. So a higher dimensional being never tells you anything that makes you feel like you can take their power, use it over others, become famous, become powerful. That's demonic, and that's a lower vibrational thing. If you are so deluded in your, as most humans are, in your selfishness that you think God is going to give me some kind of power over others, then you can't see the red flag that's right in front of you. All right, so demons, ghosts, and dark spirits. Demons, as I said, are not humans. They're not conscious beings. They're they're a concentration of very negative energy that walks around as though it is conscious and it's looking to feed. It's like a zombie. And then we have ghosts. Ghosts are the lower self, or the unconscious identity. Remember, I keep telling you there's a difference between your human 3D identity, which is a character you've made up, and then there's your soul identity, which is a higher dimensional essence. When you die, your soul leaves the body, period. It goes somewhere else. Ghosts, however, are people who died when they didn't come to peace with themselves. They are angry, they're lonely, they're lustful, they're greedy, they're something negative. They die in that state, and that program of their identity leaks out and starts walking around as though it's a human. That's why you can talk to ghosts and they'll tell you, that they're trying to do this or trying to do that. If you try and tell them, listen, it's time for you to go to the light, it's not 1837, they get very angry. And they get angry because for the same reason that when you go to somebody, when they're wrapped up in their ego, if somebody's deluded in their ego and you try and tell them, look, you're not king of the universe, you're just another human, they get very upset because they don't want to be talked out of their delusion. Ghosts are the same way. And so this is why, for me, as a spirit fighter, if I come up against a ghost or a demon, I destroy them. I let that energy dissipate, because it's just an emotional energy, or it's a psychological energy, but there's nobody home. There's no consciousness there. It's just a program that's playing itself out. So I'll go and I'll slice it to shreds and send it back, as energy back in the universe. And then I left here, and I put here also dark spirits, because there are beings and entities that don't fit into any category. So I sort of left that, there's not just there's not just ghosts and demons, but there's also other dark, weird things that I don't know what they are. But again, they're not at the level of 3D consciousness or above. So I put them in that category. So that's the second dimension. The third dimension, we have dark force humans, we have aliens, and we have animals. So we have normal humans, we're part of the third dimension. And of course, dark force humans are humans. There's no such thing as NPCs. It's a very childish thing. People who believe in NPCs, you can tell they've been damaged and or are incredibly immature. because to believe that there are NPCs or people that don't have souls, that leaves it open that I can decide if you do something I don't like. If you do something psychopathic to me, I can decide you're not a real person. You're an NPC. And it shows it's a projection. So people who believe in NPCs, they unconsciously believe that they are an NPC, which means they don't believe they have any value. They don't have any worth. They're afraid of not being accepted and loved by God. That's why people like that believe in sin, damnation, hell, NPCs. So there's no such thing as NPCs. The worst humans on this planet who are completely divorced from their soul and they're acting like demons, creating demons and doing horrible things beyond our comprehension, and they are. The stuff that these dark force people are doing is beyond comprehension. I mean, you can't even make it up, the kind of horrific things that they're doing to other people. But they're humans, and they have souls. Their souls are very, very, very disconnected from their conscious mind, unfortunately. So humans are part of the third dimension, including dark force humans. Aliens, as I said before, aliens work for humans. So aliens are part of the third dimension, not extraterrestrials, but aliens. And then, what else did I put there? Animals. Animals are part of the third dimension. So that's the third dimension. That's some of what you can expect in the third dimension. And then in the next category, I have terrestrial, TIB. I couldn't fit it all. So terrestrial interdimensional beings. So terrestrial interdimensional beings are beings that are interdimensionals, who can travel between dimensions, who have some kind of connection here in our third dimensional vibration. So the third dimensional vibration of Earth is also split up. There isn't just one third dimensional Earth. I don't know how many there are. There could be infinite amount of them. But there is the third dimensional frequency that we live at, and our world is in that. As I'm sitting here looking out my window through the beautiful Australian rainforest here, I can see houses and things, around in my neighborhood. So those houses and those people, that is a very specific frequency, like on a radio. So you could have an FM radio, but to get to hear a specific radio station, it has to be tuned to a precise frequency, 105.5 FM or something like that. That's where we're at. So let's just, for example, let's say that human frequency in the third dimension is 105.5. Well, once you get to 105.7 or 106 or 104, just like you do that on a radio, it's a completely different radio station. Same here. So, in other words, if I were able to shift myself to a frequency just above or just below what I'm looking at here, I would see something different. Perhaps those houses would disappear. It would still be the same mountain or whatever, but the house itself would disappear. And something else could show up. Or I could be someplace where there weren't any houses and there'd be a house there. This happened a long time ago. My fiance, who's since passed away, we were walking in the mountains above Los Angeles. And we definitely had it turned out she was on her way out. She was on her way out, and I'm not going to get into all the stuff that happened, but we definitely shifted into another frequency. And there was this stone house. It looked like something out of Lord of the Rings, and it was sitting there, and I'm looking right at it, and we're both looking at it, and we both get this weird feeling, and she's like frightened, and I'm like, what the heck is that? And I get this feeling that there's something about that. And so, I had to go around a couple of trees, and when I went around a tree, the house disappeared. But there was an oak tree there. Of course, all this has all kinds of symbolism with Thor and energy and blah, blah, blah. And we both saw the house, but when we both moved to a different vantage point, the house disappeared and there was a tree there instead. And that's a good example. I definitely believe that we shifted into another earth vibration because there was a lot of messages that came as a result of that, and I won't get into that because it's very personal. And that's happened to a lot of people where they will see the actual landscape around them change. So there are beings, terrestrial interdimensional beings, that are able to shift. They're able to shift to different radio stations. They're still on Earth, but they're on a different Earth than the one you're at. And there's many anecdotal accounts of people who have watched Sasquatches walking and then disappear into thin air. There's a lot of times you'll see footprints, Sasquatch footprints that just disappear. And in some cases, there's no explanation for it. So like Yetis, for example, there will be, just snow with no trees and just empty field of snow. And you'll see these footprints that just disappear. And there's no way that a 1,000-pound Yeti could have just scampered off or, retraced his steps because you're watching him. Even if you don't watch him, there's no way he could have done it. Well, that's because they are shifting. They're shifting into different frequencies on the Earth plane. Now, I don't know how many other beings there are, but I know from personal experience, because I've experienced Sasquatches, they exist. They're interdimensional terrestrial beings. Earth spirits, which I use the word earth spirits, but we could say things like gnomes and I'm not going to say elves because I think elves are something else, but a lot of people conflate elves with earth spirits, and that's okay with me. Fairies, sprites, there's all kinds of beings. Each region of the earth has its own types of beings. There's Native Americans talk about these small beings that walk through. In certain areas that they'll walk through a mountain, or they'll just disappear in the side of a hill, and they're you look at them, they're physical, they're there, but they can walk through things, and they're obviously interdimensional beings of some kind, but they're earthly. So we've got Sasquatch, earth spirits. I put 5D shift because I didn't have enough room, but I'm going to put us in that category. Human beings that are making the shift to 5D. We are in the process of becoming terrestrial, interdimensional beings. And it seems, I'm not attached to this belief, but it seems as though there will come a point when those of us who are shifting, if we continue and are successful in that shift, we will literally no longer be part of this frequency of Earth. How we experience that, I don't know. We might just, I might be sitting here one day, and then all of a sudden some houses will disappear, and another house will appear, and things will shift. The trees will still be the same. Everything will be the same, but somehow the road is gone, or part of the city is gone. Buildings are gone. That kind of thing. I believe that could happen. I believe also it's possible that the new Earth might actually be not connected to this planet that we're on, but might be, another planet just phased out of our reality, and maybe we'll fly to it, shift to it. I don't know. But I do believe that is possibly where we're headed. We are also terrestrial, interdimensional beings as well. And then these are huge general categories, the 5th through the 9th dimension. So the 5th through the 9th dimension, I've listed here, extraterrestrials, light beings, councils. So let me talk about that. So in terms of, as I said, the only beings that are visiting Earth from other planets are higher dimensional, interdimensional beings. You can also call them light beings. That's why aliens aren't extraterrestrials, because you always interact with aliens in the 3rd dimension, even if they do weird paranormal stuff. And again, paranormal just means beyond normal. So a telephone to somebody 200 years ago would be paranormal. You know, you're listening to a spirit. How is a spirit talking to you in the box? You know, it would be magic to them. It's not magic, it's just science, but it's beyond normal for somebody, you know, 200 years ago. So the kinds of things that aliens do to humans during abductions seems paranormal because it's beyond our understanding. So the 5th to the 9th dimension, so the ETs that are coming to Earth, I can tell you this categorically. Every single being that is coming to Earth from another civilization outside of Earth, guaranteed they are transdimensional beings. They are beings who have the ability, they either exist normally in a higher dimension like the 5th dimension, or they have the ability to shift back and forth between the 3rd, 5th. You know, they have the ability to go in between dimensions. Every single one. How do I know that? As I said before, I was right years ago when I said there's no way that aliens are coming to Earth, because again, I was coming from the assumption that everything happens in the 3rd dimension. I didn't even know what higher dimensions would mean. In fact, most people who talk about interdimensionals, they don't even know what it means. They don't even know what a higher dimension means until you've experienced it. You can't possibly know what it is. Most people conflate, you know, shifting out of this frequency of Earth to a different frequency of Earth. People would conflate that with transdimensional beings. And I'm making a distinction here. So there's the 5th dimension and above, and then there's the 3rd dimension. So any being that is traveling to Earth from another galaxy, from another planet, has to be a higher dimensional being, because they can't go the speed of light. They wouldn't be able to get here. It would be impossible for them to get here. Maybe there's stuff I don't know about. Maybe it's possible for 3rd dimensional beings to use wormholes and things like that. Maybe that's possible, but I can categorically tell you, having interacted with them, and I think I can speak on their behalf, every single being that's coming from an extraterrestrial zone, they are higher dimensional beings. Light beings. So light beings, I'm creating a different category. Now there are, you know, these things can intermingle. So an extraterrestrial, when I use the word extraterrestrial, I'm talking about a being that has a physical body, that was born on another planet and is a different species, maybe just slightly or maybe hugely different, but it's a different species. And they either come from a higher dimension or can shift into higher dimensions. And so these would be, you know, extraterrestrial physical, you know, bodily entities like us. We are a terrestrial bodily entity. So they have physical bodies, but they're at higher dimensions, and that makes them, any being that can go to higher dimensions automatically is a light being. That's how I'm categorizing that. Because all of the light, you know, all of the light that's hitting my face, which is coming from, you know, it's cloudy outside and the sun is shining through. Even if I had, you know, my lights on and a light was hitting me, all of that light is coming from actually the 5th dimension. And that's not me making that up. That's coming from scientists. Scientists will tell you that all light in our 3rd dimension is coming from the 5th dimension. It's leaking into our 5th dimension. Stars are gateways to higher dimensions. How do I know that? Because light comes out of them. So anything that creates light, even your light bulb, you know, light beings can travel through that. They can travel through your light bulb. They can travel through fires. That's why lots of times, you know, spirits will emerge out of somebody's fire. You know, if you look back, you know, hundreds or thousands of years, and there's a story about, you know, the angel came out of the fire and stood before them. It's because light beings move through light. That's how they're able to, you know, it's like their ocean. They're able to travel through that. And light is conscious. All light is consciousness. So there can be physical extraterrestrial beings who are also light beings. And then there are light beings that aren't physical. They don't have a physical body. And they could function. I don't know exactly how it works. Perhaps they're in different dimensions. I don't know. In other words, what I mean is maybe it's possible to be a light being in the fifth dimension, but not have a body. Or it could be that, light beings without bodies only come from higher dimensions. I honestly don't know, but I'm putting extraterrestrials and light beings both together. They come together because any being, you're a light being as well, by the way. And if you're able to unlock that, you would be able to take your light being essence and go to other places. This is what interdimensional meditation is teaching you how to do, to send your light being to other places. I don't know what I look like in other dimensions when I go there. There have been times, one time I was meditating interdimensionally, and just to let you know, I'm not doing out of body work. So it's not like I'm putting my body into a state and then my soul is leaving my body. That's a whole other thing. I don't do that. I'm not designed for that, and I don't want to do that, because when your soul leaves the body and you're completely out of body and you communicate with a higher dimensional being, and that higher dimensional being communicates to you, your soul expands, because information in higher dimensions is actually an energetic force. It's not just ones and zeros in your brain, which is when I communicate with words to you, it goes through your ears and your brain sees ones and zeros and turns it into language that means something. So these intellectual concepts come to you, but they don't really impact you. When a higher dimensional being communicates, all of the energy behind that, everything about it, hits your soul, and your soul will expand to be able to take it in. And then when you go back into your body, if you're completely disconnected from your body will then have to deal with that. And it could be very damaging. In fact, you could be out there, out of body, communicating with higher dimensional beings. And if you get enough information, your soul and the energy of your soul will expand to such a degree that you can't get back in your body. Your body it'll kill it. So this is one of the reasons that I'm not trying to go out of body, because when I communicate astrally to higher dimensional beings, I feel it in my body. And if you've done it, you may know what I'm talking about. You'll feel this energy in your heart center. It'll feel like pressure on your heart, or you'll feel just huge energy going through me. So when these beings speak to me, a lot of times, especially if they're beings between the fifth and the ninth dimension, when they communicate to me astrally, I feel it in my body. So my body, my energy body physically is expanding in real time with my soul, as my soul is communicating, or my astral body is communicating. So I forgot what I was talking about. So light beings. And then there are the councils. I'm going to tell you some things that you can forget about. And then I'll tell you what you can believe in. My belief, first and foremost, is that I'm not going to say this as a rule, but so far, every single person who claims to channel extraterrestrials are either lying or deluded or both. I've never heard one say anything that sounded even close to the kinds of things that I'm told and the experience. So I still keep trying. If somebody says that they're gonna channel the Arcturian Council, I'd love to hear from the Arcturian Council. But whenever I hear them channel, I know almost immediately that it's nonsense. And I can't tell whether they're lying or whether they're deluded. Usually deluded people are lying to themselves, so they kind of are lying, but they consciously believe what they say anyway. But councils exist, and this was one of the biggest things, because I didn't know. Based on my experience and based on religions, I didn't know what existed beyond our third dimension. I didn't know what it was like. You know, our Western religion kind of makes it sound like there's God, and then, you know, there's everything else. And so God is sort of controlling everything. And so all the other spirits are just sort of floating around, you know, and there's angels, and then there's humans in heaven, and there's no real order or anything like that. But actually, you know, and also what's happened in our modern society, we've gotten away from monarchies, which is a good thing. But, you know, monarchies are you know, social structures of, you know, being able to organize societies and things like that. And there's levels of power and levels of responsibility and all of that. And so, you know, myself, and I think everybody else, sort of has this feeling that that doesn't exist. And since we've gotten out of, since it's so frowned upon, the idea of monarchies and, you know, tyrants and rulers, we just assume that on the spiritual level of things that doesn't exist. That since I'm sitting here telling you that from the perspective of the light beings, everybody is equal, then there's obviously nobody ruling anything or controlling anything. But it was a shock to me to be communicated to by councils. One of the first time, when, you know, in June of 2022, when I had my first interaction, successful communication with a higher dimensional extraterrestrial, and then of course there was at least 3 months where I was just getting completely bombarded with all kinds of stuff, and ETs were showing up in my house daily, and every single night beings were showing up and doing energy work on me. And as you remember, I was really having a hard time keeping my sanity. But almost immediately what happened was, you know, I can tell when they come into the room, they're actual physical entities. These are beings from higher dimensions who astrally travel into my bedroom. Now, with my eyes closed, I can see outlines of beings standing there, and they look different ways. And I open my eyes and there's nothing there. So I have to keep my eyes closed and meditate. By the way, people who take mushrooms talk about this. And that's because DMT is a way of connecting you to other dimensions. And people who take mushrooms, if you're walking around with your eyes open, you know, but as soon as you close your eyes, you go into a vision. It's because the DMT is allowing you astrally to enter into other dimensions. Anyway, that's what the interdimensional meditation does. And one of the things that happens when you are connecting to higher dimensional beings is all kinds of DMT gets released in the brain. And the good news is you don't have to take any chemicals for that to happen. And how you know that they're not around is your brain won't do that. You know, I know that there's nobody around if I try and go into interdimensional meditation, and I never get to that place, you know, because you can feel all of the energies and all that. You can feel it. Anyway, first day that, among the first times that this happened, beings showed up. I felt their energy incredibly strong. First, a being showed up, and she was feminine, and she said, I won't tell you everything that was told to me because you wouldn't believe me if I did, but she came to me and she said, you're about to get an upgrade. And now bear in mind, I'm getting telepathic message and my brain is interpreting it as best it can. That's how my brain interpreted it. She said, you're about to get an upgrade. And she was very happy and she was very proud because I had taught you guys some meditations and led you guys in some meditations. And apparently that was something they were waiting for. I guess they were waiting for me or somebody to do something like that, because then that opened up a whole thing of, you know, that sets off a whole series of events, and, you know, it was a huge deal. That's the feeling I got. So she shows up, her energy was very nice, and she said, you're going to get an upgrade. Somebody's coming to visit you. Get ready. So I was getting ready, and apparently I must have had a weird look on my astral face, because she says, now say thank you. I said, thank you. And then the being that showed up next was, I'm going to say, probably the most powerful energy I've ever felt, bar none. And his energy was so powerful, it would have been very easy for me to become frightened of him. And this being showed up, and I won't tell you what he did, but he gave me a title, like a spiritual title. And again, as I'm hearing this, it's almost breaking my brain, because my brain is resisting what's being told to me, because it is so grandiose and so beyond anything I could possibly understand. And this being gives that to me, and the energy of that communication goes in, and my energy body gets expanded beyond. In fact, it physically almost damaged me. I almost gave myself frozen shoulder again from it. I had to really practice what I've learned, which is to take what they tell me at face value, don't try and figure it out, and then don't become emotionally attached to it. Just accept it and don't try and figure it out, and it'll work itself out later, because it took months. It's been 1.5 years, and I'm still expanding into that message. And he was a member of a council. So there have been councils that have come to me. There was the council of, I can't remember which came first. I think the council of 9 was first. That's how they called themselves. We're the council of 9. Then there was the council of 12. There was a council of 5. I've recently run into a council of 3. What that means, I don't know, other than each one of those numbers corresponds to a different level of organization in this universe. There are councils, just like, in Lord of the Rings, when the councils get together, it's just like that. And they're making decisions about not so much they're making decisions on what's going to happen. They're making decisions on how to best deal with things that are happening in the universe. And it's incredibly serious business. Those beings, the level of intensity and concentration, and just, they're very, almost frightening, but they're very imposing. And I don't think they mean to be. I think it's because they're operating on so many cylinders in a higher dimension that the third dimension can't even comprehend it. So they come across as very serious. One time I went to a council and I asked for something. I asked to be able to do something, and they told me no. And that was the first time they'd ever told me no. And because it came from them, it hit me so hard. It felt like the biggest beatdown I've ever had. And I got very sad. And then I realized, wait a minute, that's a compliment. Because normally if you just say nonsense, they don't pay attention. I've learned to do that. If somebody comes on the channel and is just spewing nonsense, I just delete their comment and I don't pay attention to it. So if they respond to me, it's actually a very kind thing. They're giving me a lot of respect by answering my question and saying no, and here's why we're not going to, give you that. I don't regret it, because I was trying to figure out, how does this thing work? Are these beings like genies? Can I ask for $1 million? How does this work? So I don't regret asking, because I had to figure it out. I now know, I have a better idea of how this thing works, so I don't do that. I don't ask them for anything. And I also don't, because when they give you something, like if they come and give you a title or they give you a responsibility, you're going to be responsible for that. So I don't necessarily go around asking for stuff, because I don't know if I want that responsibility to be responsible for a whole galaxy or a planet, or I don't know if I want that responsibility. But that's the kind of stuff that's happening out there. There are definitely councils that are absolutely focused on Earth, and they sit around and they come together and they communicate and they come to decisions about all kinds of things. One of them, which is known by both the dark forces and the light forces, is that human beings are allowed to travel within their own solar system, and they are. Human beings, there is a space force that is going to planets all the way out to Pluto and back, and human beings have the right to do that. And they're monitored and controlled. I mean, ETs are making sure every time that humans do, and they do this all the time, every time they launch a nuclear weapon, and they've tried to do this to the moon and other places, the moment that they do that, ET ships will come and neutralize it and defuse that. That's happened many, many times. They have, human beings have tried to, and almost successfully diverted an asteroid to Earth in order to create, in order to kill billions of people, and ETs stepped in and diverted it. So they're letting humans do all kinds of things in space in our own solar system, but it's well known that human beings are not allowed outside of our solar system. And that is a result of councils coming together and making these decisions. And then they send out the instructions to all of the other ETs and people. And so you've got soldiers out there, and I use that in quotes, ET soldiers out there patrolling, making sure humans don't screw up. There's all kinds of things happening in terms of spirituality. There are councils that are deciding, for instance, all of the energy practices that I teach, which Kundalini was given to humans by Naga extraterrestrials, serpent extraterrestrial beings. There's no doubt in my mind that there was a bunch of council meetings on whether or not that should happen and how that should happen. Qigong, the practices that I teach, there's no doubt in my mind that councils came together to decide, and I believe that the mantis beings are at the very least one of the species who are teaching human beings Qigong. So the Qigong at the thunderwizard.com 90-day challenge, that didn't come from me. The Awakening the Immortals that you guys are doing, that didn't come from me. That was channeled through me. Now, I didn't realize it at the time. At the time, I was just, spontaneously creating a practice from what I knew. But I know now that what was happening is that probably a mantis being was telepathically guiding me to create that. So there's council meetings on that. There was probably a council meeting about the Awakening the Immortals. They probably got together and decided what they were going to allow me to channel and teach. And, the fact that I'm giving it away for free, on public here on YouTube, all that stuff. There's decisions being made about all that stuff. We don't realize all the things that are happening all the time. So the councils are a very important part of the function of the universe, and these beings live in higher dimensions. There's one council, is it the Council 9? It might be more than one council, but there's been numerous times that I've gone to the Council of 9 to ask questions or to, go over things that they've told me. And for some reason, whenever I get there, they're always to my right. And whenever I try and turn to my right, it's like, that wall moves with me. I can't get myself. Sometimes I can, if I work really hard, I can sort of turn things around so I can see it. But I think that has to do with the fact that they're in a higher dimension. And if you investigate what higher dimensions are, instead of having, the four corners that create the box that we live in, there's like another box attached to that, which means there are other directions. So I think what's happening is my third dimensional astral body is tapping into at least a fifth dimension or above. And so I can't look at it straight on because I'm only a third dimensional being. It's just the weird kind of stuff that I never thought existed when, before I started doing any of this work. All right, so the fifth to the ninth dimension. So my experience is that there are beings between the fifth dimension and the ninth dimension that have physical bodies. They are extraterrestrial beings. They had a physical body, born on a planet somewhere, but they live in higher dimensions or can travel to higher dimensions. And they're anywhere between fifth and the ninth dimension, and they're incredibly powerful. And if you physically interact with them, the power that, just the fact that they're from a higher dimension, I have to be very careful. when that being that came to me that gave me the energy upgrade, when that being, just one word, it was one phrase, gave me that title, that hit me so hard that, as I said, my physical body started, I started having real problems physically. I was in a lot of pain. It's because mentally, emotionally, and astrally, I was struggling to expand into that higher dimensional energy. And right after that, like the next day, the message must have got back to them, because the next day, I believe it was that same feminine spirit. She showed up and she said, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. We didn't realize that the energy of that encounter was going to be damaging to you. I'm so sorry about that." And I've never had that since. It's hard on my ego, because I wish that they, but apparently they thought I was stronger than I am. But that all of that stuff is very, very important. There are higher dimensional beings out there that are watching what's happening on Earth, and then there are beings at lower dimensional levels, and they interact between the two, and they have to be the go-betweens, because we couldn't tolerate. We would not be able to handle a physical being at a 6th, 7th, 8th dimensional level. We couldn't handle it. So I'm making a distinction here between the 5th and the 9th dimension, because according to physics, again, I love that physics exists. According to physics, once you get to the 9th dimension, it becomes problematic to have a physical body. Definitely by the time you get to the 10th dimension, it's impossible to have a physical body. And the reason for that is, just in the 5th dimension, for example, if you've noticed, I'm not talking about the 4th dimension, because the 4th dimension is time. We already live in the 4th dimension. We're three-dimensional beings flowing through the 4th dimension. The 4th dimension is time. So in the 5th dimension, you can have access to every single point in time of the timeline that you live. So you can go back to your birth, you can go to your death, you can go 10 years from now, 5 years in the past, and you can be in every single one of those moments. And you can be fully conscious in each one of them simultaneously. So there's an infinite number of places in time that you can be existing. Now you're also in this one point in time right now, Sunday 3:08 p.m. here in Queensland. At this particular point in time in the 5th dimension, you can be in as many different physical locations as you want. Infinite. And you can be doing an infinite number of things, and you can be completely 100% focused in each one of those instances. The best way to look at that is, if you ever watched I'm so bad with names when I do these videos. Anyway, I'll just have to forget that example. Anyway, you get what I'm saying. So I'm trying to remember the name of a movie, and it's not coming to me. Dr. Manhattan, whatever movie that had Dr. Manhattan in it. There's a scene where Dr. Manhattan is doing a bunch of different things. There's 3 or 4 of him. He's made himself into 4 different people, and he's making love to his girlfriend. She's getting, she's in ecstasy because there's like 4 of him, touching her in all kinds of different places. And at the same time, he's talking to some guy on some video conference. And at the same time, he's putting together he's doing a bunch of different things at once. And she hears him and she opens her eyes and sees like 4 or 5 of them, and then sees a bunch of them walking around, and she, like women do, she gets all bent out of shape because you're not paying enough attention to me. And he says, "I was completely focused on you." And he's right. That's the 5th dimension. Dr. Manhattan is a good example of what can happen in the 5th dimension. You can be in infinite number of places doing infinite number of things, and you are 100% focused in each one of them. So that's just the 5th dimension. And so there are beings that are interacting with us, these light beings. I'm going to say every single one of these light beings are at the 5th dimension or above. So I don't know, there was a point I was trying to make about that. You're able to have a physical body while doing what I just described. And, you know, it gets more and more complicated, and I won't get into it because I don't even understand it, but that's just the 5th dimension. But the 6th dimension, from the dimension of the 5th dimension, when the 5th dimensional person looks at what a 6th dimensional being can do, the 5th dimensional being goes, oh my God, that is just beyond my understanding how they can do all that. And the same was all the way up to the 9th dimension. But you can have a physical body in each one of those dimensions. By the time you get to the 9th dimension, but more specifically the 10th, it's impossible to have a physical body. And that's because the possibilities become so numerous that there's no real reality anymore. That the reality that you live in is more like a haze. It's like a smoke. It's nothing specific. You're no longer specific timelines. You're everything and all the possibilities and probabilities. You're simultaneously in every single possible thing. And so at that point, it's impossible to have a physical body. At that point, you're a god. You can be everywhere. You know, 1 billion people can be worshiping you, and you're with them, and they pray, can you please do something? And you can go back in time and fix that and go in the future. And, there's multiple, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it just gets huge. And so my experience is once you start communicating with entities, now this is going to sound backwards, but it's my experience. Once you start talking to beings that don't have a physical body anymore, it's a lot more easy to handle. It doesn't have the stress on your physical body or your brain anymore. And I don't really know why that is. I kind of have some feelings, but I can't really explain it. But the idea is that at that level, they're able to monitor the frequency output, or they're already you. Let's put it that way. They're already you. They're already 100% you, so it's really, coming out from you. And that's true, all teachings, the ultimate teaching of Shiva is that everybody is Shiva. Shiva is everybody. And Shiva is a deity. He doesn't have a physical body. Shiva is at the very least a 10th dimensional, if not a 12th dimensional being. So at that point, it's already you, so it's not, different. An actual physical entity that may have access to you on that level, maybe know everything about you, feel everything that you feel, can see all of your past, present, and future, and past lives and possible lives. They still have a physical body. They still have a specific identity. And so because they're specific, they have a power level. They have a frequency. So no matter what, they vibrate on this very powerful frequency. Now there's all kinds of, there's a spectrum on this and give and take, because I've experienced physical light beings whose energy was very easy to handle. But when the council guys physically show up, there's no way to experience that and not know that because it's like the whole third dimension just gets torn open. And you are experiencing some kind of, altered dimensional experience. There's just no, I mean, don't get me wrong. Once it's over, your head will try and gaslight you out of it, but your body will be like, no, wait, I felt that. That happened. You may not get that, but I felt that. And this is when you start feeling like you're going crazy. So once you get beyond 9th dimension, then those beings, I guess, are already you, and you can handle the energy. It doesn't mean they can't amp up the energy, because they can. But you can communicate with them and get energy downloads from them, and it won't It won't flip you out the way it does if another physical, higher dimensional being comes into your physical presence. Or even their astral body. Even if their astral body comes into your, even if their astral body beams into you, it's going to mess with you. You're going to feel it. And you'll die. Every time that they come to you, you die a little bit to the third dimension, and you feel it. And so you got to be prepared. If you want to have the kinds of interactions I have, you got to be prepared to die every time they physically show up. I mean, not completely die, but you do. You die a little bit to the third dimension. I'm not really here. I mean, I still have to do all the things that I do, and I still worry about, can I pay bills and stuff like that, but I'm just not really here anymore. Every time that I've met with them, I've had to keep dying and dying to myself, and I'm I'm here, but I'm not. Anyway, so at the ninth dimension, we're talking about deities. There are other beings I want to talk about, timekeepers and architects. I put them into the ninth dimension, but I don't know that they have to exist there. But there are beings that have showed up that have called themselves, and I conflate the two. I'll be honest, I can't tell the difference between these two, but there are time architects and there are time engineers. The engineers are I think the ones I've interacted with the most. I mean, and I'm just telling you, that's how they called themselves. And they don't look like anything you would imagine. I don't know how, they look like this. So here's a typical Aussie hat, by the way. I don't know if you can see, but. All right, so you see how that, forget about the brim. You see that part of the hat that just looks like a big jujube or something? That's what they look like. They're just these round things, and they don't really walk. They just sort of, but they don't have face. I didn't see any face. They were just like these, but they communicate, and they were there, and they were, these guys are constantly doing things to time. I hesitate to call them timelines, because I think that's, people have sort of dumbed down the whole timeline thing, and it makes it too three-dimensional and intellectual. But for lack of a better word, they're technicians working on timelines, bringing timelines together, branching off timelines, blocking off timelines. And they've come to me and asked about, how do you want this to happen? How do you want that to happen? And then they'll come back later and say, we worked on this timeline, and, and stuff that I don't understand, if I'm being honest. But, for whatever reason, and for reasons I can't talk about now, they come to me and they want my input and my advice on timelines and things. So there are, the technicians, and then there are the architects. And they look, I think they look like that too. They're just nothing you can physically comprehend. They just look like blobs of, like big giant jujubes or something. But they communicate just like they're conscious beings that communicate. They just, for whatever reason, maybe they don't want to. They just don't manifest in any physical body. Maybe they don't have a physical body, or maybe that is their body. I don't know. It's so weird and so beyond my understanding. I don't know the answer to it. But timekeepers and architects and deities, we talk a lot about deities, so I won't belabor that, but those are at the ninth dimension or above. And then we have, so far at the 10th dimensional level and above, I've only experienced the supreme consciousness. And I've talked about this before. This is the being that calls themselves the Mother Father. And they've given me their names. The feminine has given me the name. She wants me. Maybe, I don't know what other names. I'm sure she has infinite number of names, but she gave me her name as Illah. And Illah is a very, very obscure Vedic sun goddess. There's a reason for that. She says she's my mother, and I won't get into why that turned out to be a big deal, because she told me about a past incarnation. I was able to look it up and find out who she said I was. And if I told you who that was, you wouldn't believe me. And so I'm not ready to share that. But that's what blew my mind about her. And, she's 100% light. And I've shown you here that if you look at the yin-yang sign, the darkness is supposed to be the feminine, but at the center of the feminine is a point of light, and that's who she is. And the opposite is true for the father, the masculine. He's actually darkness, but he is the center of the light. So, this is a very advanced teaching for people who understand about yin and yang. I'm not going to take the time to go into that. And of course, he called himself Tarhunt. And I had heard, I think I might have heard that name, because when I asked him, I was like, what is your name? And he first said Tahunta. And then I must, inside I went, and he goes, Tarhunt. And then he says, look it up. And I looked it up, and I found both Tahunta and Tarhunt and Tarhunts, and turns out to be perhaps the oldest sky father god in Indo-European, in written Indo-European history, older than the Vedic tradition, going back to the Hittites. And they are very easy to experience, and I think it's because, again, they are me. So it's not like, their power destroys me, because I'm already them. They're already me. They're already you. And so, but I asked them, because I was having this telepathic experience, which I couldn't tell. Am I fantasizing this? I couldn't tell what was going on. And so I said, can you please give me some energy so that I know that this is really happening? Meaning, put some higher dimensional energy into my body so that I can feel it. And sure enough, they did. Both of them did. And it was very different energy, and it was definitely a higher dimensional energy. And they've been able to, they've given me energetic, energy initiations and empowerments. And they definitely can turn the knob up or down. They have tremendous control. But again, they obviously don't have a physical body. They said, we're the gods that the gods worship. They said, we've created all of the gods. We are the mother and father of all beings, including all of the gods. And so, they've been a really interesting experience as well. So I wanted to just kind of go back and go over some of this, because I throw around these words, higher dimensional beings and all that. But, from my understanding, this is the ladder of consciousness. When I use the ladder of consciousness, what's important to understand is that what I'm experiencing now is what's normal for every being outside of the third dimension. This isn't anything, this is, we live in a very unique place where we believe that we're isolated. We can't feel these things or interact with them. But once we get beyond the third dimension, everybody, to some degree, I don't know if my experience will be different for others. I don't know what the actual fifth dimensional experience will be like. But I definitely know, to some degree, everybody will have this experience, and they'll see that consciousness does. Yes, there's higher consciousness and higher levels of consciousness, but it's a ladder. And there's, it's not like we'll be, like now we have to read the Bible or something. You have to read something. This is for somebody to tell you what you're supposed to believe about, the afterlife or spirit. And that's unfortunate, because the Bible is a lie. The majority of it is made up. It's a made up lie, half truths or complete lies that are designed to completely keep you controlled. And the sad part is the third dimensional person doesn't know because they can't experience it. So they just have to take whatever's being given to them and accept it or reject it. But there will be a reality that everybody will experience, and they won't have to go to figure it out. Maybe they'll go to somebody to explain more as I'm going to continue to learn the difference between, one of those timekeeper guys and an actual physical, being from another planet. I even went to a planet where there are beings that were crystals. There are these crystals floating around. And I was one of them. Apparently that was the first planet I incarnated on, was this planet of these crystals. And I went back to being a crystal that absorbed sunlight, and it was, and I haven't gone back there recently, but there's all kinds of, it's just so incredible. It's so unbelievable. It's so beyond anything that we could put into our sci-fi or fantasy. It's just anything you can believe in beyond, that's actual physical, real reality. And it's based on consciousness. Unlike in the third dimension, everything is based on physical matter. Out there, everything is based on consciousness. All right, so as always, I bit off more than I can chew, and wasn't able to talk about that in a short amount of time. I'm going to take a look and see if there's anything that I want to respond to. Let's see here. Yeah, got to get a sponsor, Pure Life Science. You got to get a sponsor. You got to work the steps. It's your only way out. I'm telling you right now. It's your only way out. There's no other way. If you do that, you can solve all those problems. Sorry you're going through that. Okay, let's see what else. Nothing else. Okay. All right, that's it for me, guys. Thank you so much for letting me do this. And I know there's a lot of information here, so you won't hurt my feelings if you need to come back over time and spend more time. It's a lot of stuff to digest. But I do recommend that you use this channel like a library. I'm not here just to entertain you. I'm here to give you knowledge. I'm here to my job is to give you all of the knowledge that I find, and then you have to do something with it. And my dad, as a physicist, after he died, he had equations that, to my knowledge, scientists are still trying to figure out. He was a brilliant physicist. So there are things that I've put on here, things that I've written in books. Don't expect to be able to understand it in one go. You should be going back to, you should bookmark some of these videos and go back and watch them again and again and again and again. Because it's also going to be the case with me. When I'm gone, people are going to take this body of work that I've given, and they're going to spend a lot of time poring over it and learning from it. It's already happening with the other books having to do with the Thunder Wheel and working with the 9 directions. People are already taking that and breaking that apart and expanding on it. I'm giving you huge chunks of information, and you don't expect to be able to digest the whole thing. Put some time and effort into really trying to expand your ability to understand. This is why I get so annoyed at questions, because people aren't spending the time to listen and really absorb. They're asking superficial questions based on their fear and their intellectuality, and that's not what I want. I'm not here to spoon feed you easy stuff. I'm giving you the deepest truth that I can find, and means you got to spend some time really trying to digest it. People who take their time and ask questions after they've digested it, I can tell. I can tell when you've really digested information. I can also tell when you've done the work, when you've done the practices. I will know. The moment you open your mouth, I will know if you've done the work. So take advantage of this while it's still here. Okay, we're all done. That's it. Thank you so much, guys. I love you all. And yep, if the flash don't come or I don't get beamed up to the Starship Enterprise, I will see you guys all very soon. Please take advantage of these. Go to thunderwizard.com and subscribe to the 90-day challenge. Go to 923.thunderwizard.com. Start doing those teachings and those practices while they're still available to you. It's definitely worth it. Don't just come on here and listen. You're almost wasting your time doing that. Get into action. I love you all, and I'll see you guys very soon. Please take good care.